but that was the first one. So I
Right.
heard the second one's the one that might do it.
Okay, hear ye, everyone. Welcome to the Southeast Neighbors General Meeting here. And I'd like to welcome y'all all and thank y'all for attending. I'd like to introduce our current board. I'm not sure everyone's visible yet, but we'll do the countdown here. We have Jess Roshak, who is in my upper left.
Dennis can't hear you.
Can't hear me. Who can't hear me? Can you hear me, Jess?
I can hear you A-okay. Can everybody give a thumbs up if they're hearing okay? Yeah.
That's weird. Okay.
Okay, so somebody's not, but I can hear them. So if you're not in the queue, would you please mute?
I can hear you. Okay.
Thank you. Anyway, our board, we have Jess Roshak, Sue Luddington, David Monk, William Collins, Emily Fox, our secretary, Christina Hansberry, our treasurer, and myself, Dennis Hebert, as chair. We're going to first start the meeting with public comments. If you wish to speak, you will have approximately 3 minutes. Please put your name in the chat with the words public comment to be placed in the queue. After the public comment, we will have some housekeeping business to do. According to our charter, the general membership must ratify our newest board members, who are Devon Mann, who is hopefully going to be the vice chair, and Rob Fisette, who is going to be an at-large member. Jess, do we have any one in the queue yet for public comment?
No one yet. I know that Judith had been in the queue, so. If you have a public comment or an announcement that you want to do, we can just have you go to the chat. It's at the lower part of your screen. Just click where it says chat and then just type in public comment so that we know that you want to speak. And Judith Newman is the first one.
Should I start now?
Yes, you're Great. 3 minutes on.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Judy Newman, and I live in this neighborhood, and I wanted to thank you for just having this time to introduce myself. I wanted to let you know that I'm running for a second term on the Eugene School Board, and there's a very short timeline. The election is May 18th, and there's not going to be a voter's pamphlet, so I wanted to just come and introduce myself and tell you a little about me. I've spent my entire career in education, and I come from a long family of educators. I'm the co-founder of Early Childhood Cares, EC Cares, which we founded in 1991, and we provide early intervention to children with disabilities and their families in Lane County. And since the beginning, we've served over 25,000 children and families, and these kids have gotten a better start in life and started school ready to learn. So 4 years ago, George Russell and some other local educators asked me to run for school board because they thought my experience and knowledge are what's needed at this time. I'm the first person to ever serve on the 4J school board that has early learning experience, but also really in-depth, many years of special education experience. I have an ability to bring people together to solve problems, and I think that's been an asset on our board over the last 3.5 years. This past year, as you know, has been very challenging with many ups and downs, and we finally have a pathway to get kids back to school and have staff and students come back safely. And that's our #1 priority. We're getting ready to be able to address the needs of students as they return, including mental health issues and any learning loss that we see. I have some other priorities that I'm excited. I hope this COVID thing gets over with soon, but to stabilize and expand school funding, expand community partnerships, because schools can't do this alone and we need help from our community partners. Ensure that our schools are safe and welcoming for all students, students of color, LGBTQ students, kids with disabilities. Our overall graduation rates have gone up 17% over the last 5 years, and we really need to continue that trend. And this year we will be hiring a superintendent, and I want to be sure we have a superintendent that really reflects the values and goals of our community. So I'd love to come back sometime and answer questions and do a more in-depth presentation if you'd have me. I think I saw my website in the chat box, but my name's Judy Newman, and it's www.electjudynewman.com. I'm really happy to talk to anyone. I love to hear what people are thinking about education and what you all think is important. So thank you so much for letting me come.
Thanks, Judy.
Thank you.
Appreciate your public comment. And we have another one. Linda Duggan is up next.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'm Linda Duggan, and I'm on the Southeast Neighborhood Transportation Committee. And I just wanted to let everyone know that we have the most excellent group of people on this committee, and we're working hard to try to keep our neighborhood buses, LTD buses. And it's slow, but I think we're making some progress. And I'm encouraged, and I just want everyone to know that we're working hard for you. Thanks.
I don't see anybody else in the chat, but here's your last opportunity if anyone has public comment. Thanks, Linda. And Dennis, I don't see anyone.
Okay, well, then we'll just roll along. Thanks to everybody who, Linda and to Judith for making public comments and introducing yourself. We really appreciate that. Right now, what we have is some housekeeping to do. I don't know if y'all remember at the last meeting, but we had to do this for another member that we had. But what happens when we have vacancies on the board in between elections, people can apply to us and we interview them and either accept them or reject them as far as the board goes. After the board approves them at the next general meeting, they need to be ratified at the general meeting. So since this is a general meeting, anyone that is a member of Southeast Neighbors, that is, that lives or works within the realm of our area, are able to vote to ratify these members. So what we have right now is Devon and Rob, who I think of Rob Fisette and Devon Mann, and we interviewed both of them and approved them. They have both displayed very good people skills and very much enthusiasm in participating in the issues. And that went as far as to Devon heading up a new environmental stewardship committee and Rob heading up our newly formed human rights committee. So I'm hoping that you all read the articles in the newsletter written by both of these people and others, and can see the potential that they have for helping out on issues in the neighborhood. And we're hoping that more people get involved in all of the committees that we have whenever you have time. So now us, the SCN board here, we highly endorse these two new members of the board. So now we must see if they can be ratified. So all we're going to do is people are going to hold up their hands. So we're just asking that people raise their hand in order to ratify Devon and Rob to be an official member of the SCN board. So people raise their hands. Looks like we're getting a lot of hands raised. So I would say it's definitely a majority. So I'll say right now that Rob and Devon, y'all are now official members and y'all already started working. So we really do appreciate that. So
thank you.
Yep, you betcha. Great to have y'all on board. And next we'll hear from City Councilor Matt Keating.
Great, thank you, Dennis, and happy birthday, Judy Newman. Are you still on the call, Judy? She just left right when I wish her. That's some Matt Keating luck right there. Hi, folks. I'm your city councilor. I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot what I'm working on. today and yesterday were just nonstop Zooms. So when I can break away and actually have a conversation on the phone or even in person, safely social distance and masked up, I welcome it. So I want to thank Devon Mann, David Monk, and Ian Appow from Ecosystem Solutions for hosting me on Friday for an engaging in-person tour of key at-risk South Eugene neighborhoods. The conversation revolved around wildfire vulnerability and mitigation strategies. The neighborhoods that we visited in particular was the area around Skyline Park, up by Dillard Road and Barber Drive. It was an engaging a tour in the rain, and we wore our mud boots and we got our steps in and effectively safe social distance. So it was nice to be out and about. Thanks again, Devon, for setting all that up. Thank you to Southeast Neighbors for your recent testimony at council. And regardless of where folks land on the issue of personal and business use of natural gas, please note that I long for a resolution with our partners that allows for a partnership to meet the city's already expressed, clearly outlined goals to meet our carbon reduction goals and reducing our greenhouse gases. So I think I've been clear from the dais, and I also open to as much dialogue and communication as possible at my cell 541. I'll put it in the chat, 515-3819. You can email me mkeating@eugene-or.gov. Please reach out, and I will attempt to be as communicative and responsive as possible. And as mentioned, I'm happy to chat or even meet in person as long as we do it safely. And please, if you get a chance to get vaccinated, roll up your sleeve, get the shot twice so we can all get through this and meet in person, hopefully soon, safely together. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions. I see Megan had her hand up too. No? Okay. Oh, you're waving. Hi, Megan. Good to see you.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. And if anyone has anything that they would like to further discuss with Matt, I know it's like we're always, seem like almost once a week, we give him a call, we're meeting somewhere to go over some kind of issue. He's highly accessible. So I pretty much emphasize to say, contact him and he'll get with you and see what he can do to help you out. So thank you, Matt. At this time, I'm gonna introduce Rob Fisette. He is gonna speak about the nominating committee for our upcoming election, and he is also gonna introduce our first presenter. There will be a question and answer period after each presentation. And for questions, put your name and your question in the chat and send it along. And Jess is going to be the moderator, and she will be asking the question to the person who it is intended to go to. So at this time, Rob, it's all yours.
Hello, and thank you for the quick ratification earlier. I'm grateful to be a part of the Southeast Neighbors Board, and I hope that I can help out, get to know as many of you in the neighborhood as I can. But as you know, elections, as you may know, elections to the Southeast Neighbors Board are held every May, and will be held this year at the May General Meeting as well. So as required by our charter, we're forming a nominating committee to help potential candidates prepare their candidacy for the May board meeting. The nominating committee is made up of one board member, in this case me, and 2 non-board members. So ultimately we're recruiting 2 non-board members who would like to participate on the nominating committee for helping candidates prepare for the May board meeting, where they would want to be subjected to election to the Southeast Neighbors Board. The only real requirement is that board members, for board members, is that they're required to reside or own property within the neighborhood boundaries, but there are no other restrictions on board membership. So, whether you're interested in potentially working on the nominating committee or potentially putting yourself forward for a position on the board, I'd like you to reach out to me with any questions that you have, or to let me know that you're interested. Positions that are up for election this cycle at the May meeting, the chair position that's currently occupied by Dennis Hebert. And he is running for re-election, but other candidates are welcome to run for the position of chair as well. The secretary position is open. Our current secretary is not seeking re-election to that position. So there's a full-on recruitment for a secretary. And there are at-large positions, which can be occupied by anyone who's a Southeast Neighbors member. There are 3 at-large positions that are open. One current board member will be seeking an at-large position, but there are still 2 that are completely open with no incumbent or anything. So, so if you're at all interested in potentially running for a seat on the board, please get in touch with me. I'll drop my email in the chat. And if you're interested in participating on the nominating committee, I'm also interested in hearing that from you. All of the board positions are 2-year terms. So I guess I'll just open it up quickly to questions about what I've said so far as I drop my email in the chat. And you can also, if you lose that, you can go to our website and click the contact us link, and I'm sure that I'll hear from whatever you have to say there.
Rob, can I make a clarification? In terms of those who are eligible to run for the board, anybody who owns a business in our neighborhood, runs a business in our neighborhood, lives or works in our neighborhood are eligible to be board members. Just so folks realize that even if you don't live here, if you own a business and you operate in our neighborhood, you're eligible to be a board member. Thanks.
Thanks, David.
And can I make a comment? It's William. Am I on? I'm William Collins. I'm an at-large board member. I've been on the board for 4 years, so I'm going to be stepping down. But I really want to encourage all of you to consider it. It's a really cool opportunity to be involved with dynamic people and to really be proactive about making the neighborhood better. So I hope you'll all consider it. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks.
And Dennis, if I may have 1 minute as well, I'm Sue Ludington, and I'm another at-large board member who's done her 2-year stint and looking to move off the board. I want to point out, though, that even if you're not interested in being on the board, I believe we are still welcoming members of our neighborhood association, that's you, all of you, to participate on committees. And I'll tell you in particular, I have been working on both the newsletter, that's been one of my responsibilities, and I contribute somewhat to the website. If you have those types of skills or interested in doing work in those areas, that's some particular, very specific volunteer roles that we would be, I would be very welcome to see. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sue and William. Anyone have any other questions or comments about the upcoming election? Okay, so not hearing any, I just want to introduce our first guest speaker tonight is Sandy Cutler. Sandy is a South Eugene resident, has been for 37 years, and he's president of the board of directors of the Nightingale hosted shelters. That's the rest stop for unhoused neighbors located at East 34th and Hilliard. And so I'm going to just give the floor over to Sandy. Sandy, thanks for being here with us, and The floor is yours. You're on mute, Sandy.
Unmute.
There you go.
There we go. Good enough. So I want to start by thanking you all, the South Eugene Neighborhood Association, because without you, we would not be here. This camp would not be here without all of your support. This started before my wife and I came on the board, which was a couple of years ago. I'll tell you, I have a couple stories within stories. But anyway, I want to start by thanking you all, because without your support and help, this camp would not be here right now. So I love stories, and I want to start with not a story about Nightingale. There's a new book I just finished. It's called The Overstory by Richard Powers, and it's people's connections to trees. And it's all about connections. And I really encourage you, if you have any interest at all, to read the book, because the connections between trees and people are amazing. And we live in a tree neighborhood, in the South Eugene neighborhood. And I learned so much from this book. I had no idea that 25% of our DNA we share with trees. So I'm going to go on to the next story. The next story is how did my wife, Mary Kay, by the way, I'm going to flip this around and introduce two more people here. Flip it. There we go. There's Mary Kay White, who's also on our board, and she's the secretary treasurer. And Nathan Showers is our camp manager. And Andy is one of our other camp managers. We are in the warming shelter here at Nightingale. I was going to do a tour, but it's too dark and too cold, and we don't have the time. So let me share with you just briefly the Mary Kay's and my story about Nightingale. We live in the South Eugene neighborhood. We like to walk from Tugman Park down to South Eugene and back. And we would walk back and forth, and I saw these huts, and I thought maybe they were greenhouses, but they weren't. And I stopped in one day and I met Nathan and Tracy, who is the other camp manager that's now moved on to another place, and asked what's going on here. And they told us about this homeless shelter. It's a rest stop. It's meant as a transition place. And I was so impressed with the work that they were doing that my wife and I Mary Kay and I started coming down and spending more time and bringing things. And we did Christmas and had Christmas celebrations. And at some point in time, they asked if I would be on the board, if Mary Kay would be on the board. And so we joined the board a couple of years ago. And it's an amazingly successful success story. And the reason it's a success story is because there are three things that make this camp a success. Number one, there are rules to get in and rules to stay in. Important, rules to get in and rules to stay in. Number two, we have on-site managers. Nathan and Andy both live here in the camp. And the third thing, and this is that connection, this is community within a community, is that there's a support system within the camp. The residents here take care of each other. They look out for each other. They work on work parties together. They serve on gate duty. They're supporting each other. They're being good community members, and they're learning skills that are going to help them move along to the next step. Our board has decided that the first thing that we have to do in this camp, and what our goal is safety first, shelter first. I should say shelter first, which means safety and security. Having sanitary facilities, which means for us, it's porta potties. Having access to food, which is an outdoor kitchen. And I encourage you, I was going to give a tour tonight. We don't have time and it's too dark, but access to food means an outdoor kitchen with a barbecue and a propane stove and a few other things that we can provide access to food. But also recently access to Wi-Fi. Why access to Wi-Fi? It's so important these days. If you want to get a job, if you want to do medical things, if you want to make appointments, how do you do that unless you have access to Wi-Fi? So we recently have added a Wi-Fi hotspot and have that available to our residents. And the next thing that we're working on, which is an important thing, is where do people shower? And Matt Keating, I hope you're still on the phone call, on the Zoom call, because I want to work with you and the city council to make sure that we get access to showers at Amazon pools because they're open. These folks need a place to get a shower. It's really important for us to do that. And so I'm gonna cut this off and make it short. Our goal is being accomplished. We've had tremendous success. Thank you, South Eugene neighbors, for allowing us to be here. Thank you, Nathan and Andy and the board members. By the way, you have another board member on the call tonight, Megan O'Connor. Wave Megan, say hello. She's the vice president. Without her, we would not be doing all these great things. We've been very successful with our grant writing and our fundraising. We have enough money to run the camp. We're now trying to find enough money to do the next step, which is to help the residents that are here move on out of just being in a safe place and shelter to find work and to get the help that they need so they can actually re-enter our community and be part of the community and have permanent housing and be contributors to society. And it's working. So
Questions,
I'll stop there and I'll flip it around, and any questions you have to ask, you got to ask Nathan, who is this is Nathan's camp. Take off your mask, Nathan.
Oh.
He's also known as, by the way, as Big Red or Red. Nathan Showers is the resident. He's been here since the start of this camp. It's his vision, his mission.
He's a guru.
He is the guru of how to run a rest stop. So I'm going to stop and open up for questions.
Jess, are there any questions in the queue?
No questions in the chat right now.
Chat.
If you have a question for Nightingale, feel free to put it in the chat and we can pass it along. You could also raise your hand if you have a quick, 15-second question we can pass in.
Well, the other thing I would say is that we welcome, by the way, thank you for the response on I'm going to give you just a quick, this is what we call our warming shelter. And the huts outside here, they're Conestoga huts. I encourage people to come down and visit anytime and see. This is a warming shelter. We heat it with propane, but I encourage you to come down and see the camp and see how we're operating. It's really amazing.
Talk about bottles.
Oh, and thank you, by the way, the response we had from the bottle thing. We love bottles. We're going to be in the bottle recycling business. And we didn't think we were going to be never dreamed we'd be in that business. But we actually are going to make money to help run the camp from recycling bottles and cans. And so thank you. I've had a number of people reach out to us, and I just can't thank you enough for that. And anyhow, so.
We do have a few questions coming in for residents. One about the recycling and how we can help you with the recycled materials project. And also after that is, what's the possibility of the electrical service getting to the rest stop?
Those are two great questions. I'll let Nathan or Andy answer the recycling question. And Andy's our recycling guru.
Yes. So the recycling thing is pretty straightforward. Anything that is depositable, the bottle drop is the name of it. Anything that they can take back and give us a 10-cent refund for, whether it's glass, whether it's cans or plastic, we are more than happy to take it. You can bring it on over to 34th and Hilliard, and we've got an account set up with Bottle Drop already, and are more than happy to just take it off your hands, and we'll do all the legwork on it. So.
And tell them that we have gate duty, that people can bring it by almost any time, between what, 9 and
between 9 and 4, guaranteed there's somebody going to be sitting right there. And then even after 4 o'clock, there's people here pretty much all day long. If you show up at 2 in the morning, we'll probably be asleep, but you can set the cans and bottles out front and we'll find them in the morning too. So.
Yeah. All right. Nathan, how about the electricity? I mean, we've talked about that for a long time.
Electricity, we've talked about it with the city, and just, it's so expensive to put it in. So I think the last time we talked about electricity being put in here, it was going to be like $15,000. So we don't have close to that or anything to put power in. But right now we run off generators, and that's what part of the whole can and bottle thing buys our gas for our generator to run. So, and to run our refrigerator, our microwave, and our stoves. So it's really awesome bottles and cans to Nightingale, because it does help us every day. So thank you for everybody that helps us.
But also mention that we have no running water. Tell them where we get the water from.
We get it from a faucet over at Good Samaritans. They're very nice about giving us water. We get it there daily for our hand washing station. We own our own hand washing station. And then we have a big 55-gallon barrel that's on wheels that we wheel over there to wash dishes and do stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
We have a question from Beverly. And how many residents are there? And is each unit occupied only by one person, or are there more?
It's a lot more comfortable for one person in every unit. It's just, and right now we got 17 people in camp. So yes, I do have a few openings. I vet people in during the week, and I move in on Mondays right before the camp meeting so they can get to know everybody. They can hear all the rules and become part of the community. So, yeah.
We have a total of 20 huts available, and we have 17 occupied right now. And by the way, 3 of those huts are occupied by women currently, and the others are occupied by men. We do not have any couples in the camp.
Nope. It's just, they're too cramped, and it's not big enough for 2 people. The 2 grown adults living in that little spot is just not comfortable. So, yeah.
And a couple other related questions is, how long would a person live there? And can you talk about like the process for moving to a different situation, or the barriers that are encountered in doing so?
Yes. So usually, well, and I like this rule, it's about a year long. Give them 12 months to like get themselves back together, find work, get on disability, get on a housing list for getting into Section 8s and stuff like that. So we try to give them about a year, but it's all case to case to case. We can't treat everybody the same way. So there's some people that are really disabled that it takes a while to get disability. So we really work with certain people, and people that get jobs, we work with them so they can start saving up money and having some money to go rent a place and put the deposit down and stuff like that. So it all depends on the individual person, but the rule is 1 year.
We have moved out about 160 people into stable housing out of this little rest stop.
Wow.
Over the last 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, last 5 years.
Last 5 years.
It's actually 172 people. 2 people just
Wow.
moved out about a week and a half ago into housing. So yeah, we do have a turnover rate that's pretty awesome, I think.
We have another question about, is there a waiting list to get in? And do the women need anything in the way of supplies or sanitation?
I will answer that. Nathan will answer the question about the waiting list. Yes, we have 2 brand new women that are just moved in, and we are really short on clothing for women. We need
size.
small and medium, and rain boots, sanitary supplies would be welcomed, baby wipes, tampons, that kind of thing would be greatly appreciated.
Nathan, how about your waiting list?
My waiting list, actually, I'd like to be honest, I got openings right now, but there's not a lot of people turning in applications that qualify. So I don't allow people to be addicts or alcoholics and stuff like that, because it just doesn't work out at the long run. So I do have openings right now. You can come to the camp, bring your homeless friends and get an application, fill it out. One of the big barriers right now too is we made a new rule so we don't get COVID in our campus, that all new residents must have a COVID test when they move in, before they move in, a test that is negative. And so it's a lot of people are fighting against wanting to take the test so they don't qualify to move into camp. So it's really a barrier for some people who want to go take the test. But yeah, we do have openings right now. On the waiting list, I usually call people, and it's really sad. Homeless people lose their phones. They get their phones stolen, or they just move on to another city or another state. So it's hard to track some people down that are on my waiting list. So we do have openings.
Another barrier is no pets allowed.
Yeah.
And so many of these homeless folks have pets, and we just can't have pets in our camp.
No, it's a city ordinance actually, because there's been so many problems with pets in rest stops in the past.
So I want to thank you. I welcome all these comments and questions. And if we have time for more, I'd love to have more. Our website is nightingalehostedShelters.org. I don't have a way to put into the chat. Maybe somebody else could do that. NightingalehostedShelters.org. You can learn way more about what's going on. The other comment I would make is that this rest stop is very unique. It's not for all of the homeless people in Eugene. And part of the story I didn't share about Mary Kay and I when we got involved with this is we wanted to do something to help address this issue. And we decided that we could get our arms around helping one camp with 20 huts. And that's what we've done. But this camp is very unique. We have rules to get in, rules to stay in, on-site management, and there is truly a sense of community. I come back to that first story within a story. We are a community within a community here. It's in the South Eugene neighborhood. Thank you all for what you've done to support us. And this community is flourishing and doing well because of your support and other people's support. And I encourage you, if you're interested, to come and visit, to donate your cans and bottles, to donate money, or even to maybe get involved at even a deeper level. Perhaps even we may have board openings ourselves in the future. And I just can't thank you enough for this opportunity. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, South Eugene neighbors, for this opportunity.
Okay, Sandy, thank you very much. Thanks to Red and everybody there. We applaud your efforts. South Eugene neighbors, like you said, has always been very supportive from the initial onset when they wanted to put the huts there. We started with a few huts and we gradually built over the years. So we appreciate all your work and your endeavors in it. So thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Okay, and next on board is that we have a presentation concerning the EWEB water storage project. We have Jennifer Connors, who is a communication and marketing supervisor, Laura Farthing, EWEB engineer and project manager, and Commissioner John Barofsky. So Jennifer, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Am I coming through? Great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and the order of operations is EWEB Commissioner John Barofsky is going to kick us off, and then he'll turn things back to me, and then I'll turn things over to Laura, and then we'll have some time for Q&A.
Thanks, Jen. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to present at your Southeast Neighbors meeting. My name is John Barofsky. I'm a newly elected commissioner. Sorry, the screen's going crazy. Newly elected commissioner for wards 2 and 3. A little about myself. I live in Ward 3, but I have lived in your neighborhood previously to moving over towards Hendricks Park area. So I'm very familiar with the South Eugene neighborhoods very well. I've only been on the job for a couple of months here, so I'm in the very much of a learning mode. Learning and listening is kind of what I'm in the mode of right now. The project that we're going to be presenting to you today has to do with building a new water storage facility on some land that EWEB bought back about 50 years ago. It's up at the end of Patterson Street, so 40th and Patterson area. It's a very important part to our resiliency of our drinking water for the whole community of Eugene. It's not just South Eugene. It affects all 200,000 customers that we have in our water districts. So I'm here to listen to you guys and hear your input. We're going to do everything we can to try and mitigate any type of impacts that we can. But again, I want to stress that this is something that affects the city as a whole. And so we kind of have to think about it that way. And I will pass it back over to some of our staff members to do a more in-dive depth here, and then listen to what you folks have to say. And I appreciate you allowing me to attend your meeting.
Okay. So hi again, neighbors. Thank you, Commissioner Barofsky. It's Jen Connors. I'm the communications lead for the project. I'm also a Southeast neighbor. I've worked for EWEB for about 23 years. And one of the topics that I specialize in is communication around resiliency and emergency preparedness, including overseeing EWEB's Pledge to Prepare program, which I hope some of you are familiar with. A key message that we emphasize is emergency preparedness is a shared responsibility. And that's really what this graphic is intended to depict. It really takes all of these levels of preparedness working together to create a truly resilient community. So just as your household invests in an emergency kit and including storing water, I hope, EWEB is also making investments to prepare, to replace, and to maintain our community's water system. Water resiliency is a long-term, ongoing effort that implicates all aspects of the water system in what we describe as a source-to-tap approach. So it starts with protecting our source water in our treasured McKenzie River. It includes $30 million in upgrades to the Hayden Bridge water filtration plant over the last decade, replacing water mains, improving pump stations and storage facilities. It also includes alternative sources of water, such as the 5 emergency water distribution sites that are now operational throughout our community, and planning for a future second treatment plant on the Willamette River. And I'm going to take a moment here to digress and talk about our source protection work, and particularly the McKenzie watershed restoration effort. Even though that isn't our topic of conversation tonight, I know that this subject is top of mind for a lot of us, and I have a piece of timely news to share. So as we are all keenly aware, the Holiday Farm fire devastated our watershed. 25 miles of the McKenzie River burned. And in the aftermath of the fire, the safety and security of our community's source of drinking water is at risk. Wildfire can dramatically increase erosion in forests, reducing the tree cover, and that can cause ash, debris, and sediment to wash into the river. The Holiday Farm fire damage to the watershed has the potential to degrade water quality, increase treatment costs, and reduce the production capacity of the Hayden Bridge treatment plant for years to come if restoration efforts are not undertaken in key areas. You can see on the slide some of the top drinking water concerns that we are actively monitoring for. And you can also see some of the recovery and restoration projects that EWEB and our partners are working on up in the McKenzie Valley. These efforts will require extensive financial resources to ensure that our community's most basic need for clean, safe, and abundant water is reliably met. And that brings me to the piece of timely news that I wanted to share. So just last week at the March EWEB Board of Commissioners meeting, staff proposed and commissioners approved a watershed recovery fee. This will be a flat fee for all residential and commercial customers based on meter size and will be used to fund critical work such as reforestation projects in the McKenzie Valley. For the vast majority of residential customers, the fee will be $3 a month. That's based on a typical 1-inch water meter for residential customers and will be in place for 60 months, that's 5 years, at which time it will automatically sunset. The effective date will likely be later this summer. We're still determining the exact effective date, and we will be communicating details broadly with all customers in the coming weeks and months. This is really the first time that we have publicly announced the watershed recovery fee outside of the board meeting, but I thought it was appropriate to mention it since we're here tonight talking about drinking water safety and resiliency, and also to emphasize that the work that EWEB and our partners are doing in the McKenzie with the help of our customer owners is important because watershed protection is the first and most fundamental step to protecting drinking water, going back to that source to tap model. So circling back to the project at East 40th in Patterson, as you can see from the slide, the project at East 40th is one of a series of projects to upgrade our community's water storage facilities. In addition to building 2 tanks at the East 40th site, we will also be replacing the existing 15 million gallon tank or reservoir at College Hill with a new 7.5 million gallon tank and possibly another 7.5 million gallon tank at College Hill in the future. And at our Hawkins Hill water storage facility, we will be replacing the existing 20 million gallon tank with 2 new 7.5 million gallon tanks. And there are really 2 main drivers for this work. The first is resiliency. The water tanks at College Hill and Hawkins Hill are part of what we call the base level system that serve the entire community of Eugene. These tanks are old, they've outlived their useful life, and they were not built to modern seismic standards. As we upgrade aging water storage infrastructure, EWEB is moving toward what we call a distributed water strategy. And that means replacing the 2 large tanks at College Hill and Hawkins Hill with 5 to 6 smaller tanks, including the 2 new tanks at East 40th. The reason for this strategy, as I mentioned, is resiliency. Moving from consolidated to distributed drinking water storage mitigates the risk of losing all of our water in a major disaster, and it allows us to take the tanks out of service for maintenance and repair without affecting water service. The second main driver for this work is water quality and reliability. In order to replace the aging tanks at College Hill and Hawkins Hill, we first need to build replacement storage at East 40th. If we were to take out any of the base level reservoirs out of service without first building replacement storage, we would risk not having enough water for our community, particularly during high demand or for fire suppression, and we would risk water quality and reliability issues resulting from not having enough pressure in the system. So the work at East 40th is part of a larger water storage improvement strategy, and the projects are interdependent. And I'd like to also emphasize that all the new tanks will be built to modern seismic standards, and as Commissioner Barofsky mentioned, will serve all of Eugene. So even though the tanks are physically located here in our neighborhood in the South Hills, they serve all of Eugene. That's around 200,000 residents, hundreds of businesses, dozens of schools, medical facilities, and parks. These are complex legacy projects, so it's important that we take the time to make a well-informed and sustainable decision for the entire community. When I say legacy project, I mean that these tanks will outlast all of us and will serve Eugene for generations to come. Although the new tanks will benefit all of Eugene, it's important to acknowledge that neighbors of the site will be the most directly impacted during and after construction. We've been communicating frequently with the 40 or so neighbors who live directly adjacent to the property since last February. And we've heard very clearly from neighbors that top concerns are preserving natural areas, protecting view sheds, and mitigating construction impacts. To help us make good decisions, we've hired an outside firm to do a triple bottom line analysis. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the TBL concept. Basically, it's a process that looks at a project not just in terms of cost, but other important bottom line factors such as impacts on people and the environment. We also hired an environmental services firm to conduct an ecological study of the site. We learned that there are several habitats on the site, including an oak woodland. And many of you may know that oak woodlands were once common in the Willamette Valley, but have become increasingly rare and have been identified by state and local resource protection agencies as priority habitat for protection and restoration. So we want to do our best to protect that habitat. Yes, some trees will need to be removed, including some large old firs that live on the ridge line. We do not take that lightly. We live here too. We have tree DNA. Just thanks, Sandy, for that book recommendation, and definitely put that one on my reading list. We want all neighbors to know that we're committed to preserving trees and to maintaining or improving the health of the site. So we'll do things like assess critical root zones for trees that are on the margin of the construction zone. We'll create snags and nurse logs, and we'll work with community partners on replanting and restoration projects. In fact, the photo that you see there is one of our first modest restoration projects that happened a couple of weeks ago. The wonderful volunteers with Friends of Trees came out to the site and planted 18 trees on the south side of the ridgeline. That included some white and black oaks, some Valley ponderosa pine, some incense cedar, madrone, and other species that historically characterize the area. And circling back to where we started, where I talked about resiliency and kind of all things needing to work together to create a truly resilient community. In addition to being historically important native trees, the species that were selected by Friends of Trees are also more adaptable to fire and to warmer, drier climates. So this project will not only increase the resiliency of our water system, but also the resiliency of our neighborhood natural spaces as well. With that, I will turn it over to Laura Farthing, the project manager, to talk about the site layout, tank design, and construction.
Thanks, Jen. My name is Laura Farthing. I'm an engineer with EWEB. I've been with EWEB now for 13 years, and I primarily work on our engineering, planning, and doing construction management for all of our 25 pump stations and 19 reservoirs. So this is a location map for those of you who don't actually know where the site is. It's located in between 40th and 43rd, kind of between Ferry Street and Patterson. It's a site that's over 10 acres, which is pretty unique to have that large of an undeveloped site in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Can I get the next slide, Jen? So these tanks are big. They're 7.5 million gallons each. They're 212 feet in diameter, and they're going to be 30 feet deep. So because of the special nature of the site and given the size of the tanks, we really wanted to take our time in siting them and finding the right place to put them on the site. So we looked at a bunch of criteria to evaluate where to put them. First and foremost, we looked at protecting water quality. We also looked at engineering criteria. So these tanks need to connect into the existing water system that's located on East 40th. So it was important to have easy access to that location. Additionally, the elevation or the top of the water surface has to be at 607 feet, which is a very precise number, but this is why EWEB purchased the property. So that elevation makes it so these tanks will work with the entire water distribution system. It was designed that way starting in the 1930s, and this allows us to serve 87% of the community via gravity flow, which is the most reliable and economic way to deliver water to a water system. We also took into account future needs. So looking 100 years in the future, these tanks have a 100-year lifespan, and thinking about how improvements would be made over time and giving space to figure out either how to replace storage or improve the storage that's there. Additionally, these tanks need to be able to withstand a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. So we chose round, they're called pre-stressed concrete tanks. They're a proven type of tank. They have them in California and they're known to withstand an earthquake. We're including flexible piping connections, so that will allow so that the pipes won't break during an earthquake. We're also making provisions to include seismic valves, which if they sense an earthquake, they'll close the pipeline, which will keep water in the tank after an emergency event. Also, we're including provisions to get water out of it if there is an earthquake so that we can use it at our emergent water distribution sites. We also took into account impacts to neighbors. These tanks are built, the hill is solid rock, it's very hard. So we wanted to minimize the amount of rock excavation to shorten the duration of the construction project. We also wanted to limit viewshed impacts to the immediate neighbors and to the broader community by saving the ridge line that's located just on the other side of these tanks. So in looking at all of that, we did choose a tank siting that puts could you go back one slide, Jen? We looked at pushing the tanks towards the east of the site. That allows us to minimize impacts to the Oregon strategy habitat, the oak woodland, that's on the west side of the site. It also had the least amount of rock excavation, which makes for a faster construction and a more economical construction project. And this location impacts the fewest number of neighbors' viewshed. So you can see the idea is that we will partially bury the tanks and use berms, vegetated berms to do that. So only the top 15 feet of the tank will be exposed. We'll also include vegetative screening around the site so that it helps to limit viewshed impacts. Next slide, please. So this is a view of what the site will look like after the tanks are constructed, looking basically from Spencer Butte Middle School, looking north. And this is the same area where Jen showed that we have started doing some restoration planting work. You'll see that in preserving the ridge line, there's no viewshed impacts from all of the areas south of Eugene. And this also will be an area where we're looking to create and enhance the oak woodland on the site. Next slide, please. I did forget to mention on that last slide, sorry. These tanks will take up approximately 2.5 acres of the site. So that leaves 8 acres of open space that we intend to re-landscape and enhance. So for the next steps, we will be finalizing an evaluation of tank construction sequencing. So we're looking at whether or not we build one tank now and one tank of several years in the future, or if we build 2 tanks now. And after we make that decision, we'll complete the design. There'll be a public bidding process to find a construction contractor. And then we'll start site prep and earthwork late summer of 2021. And we anticipate that construction will last 2 to 3 years, depending on how many tanks we build now. And so if anybody is interested in getting more information, you're welcome to visit our website. It's listed here. Or you can contact the project team. Our email is listed on this slide. Also, you're welcome to call us at any time. And with that, we can take questions.
If you have questions, you can put them in the chat pod and we'll moderate them. Question, can you talk about the view shed on the north side? And do you have any sample pictures of that?
Jen, do you want to go back to the slide that shows the berm? This is what the site will look like from the north side. Right where the access road is, there's a white patch that's going up in between the 2 tanks. You can see one tank in the far corner behind the yellow house. Yep, right there. And then the second tank this road aligns with Patterson Street. So from the north side looking south, you'll only see the top portion of the tank, and then it'll be screened with vegetation around it to help have it blend into the hillside.
Couple more questions. So one, how does the water get into the tank? Thank you guys for putting these in the chat. How does the water get into the tanks? And when will you know if you're going to build either one or two tanks?
The water gets into the tank from East 40th Street. We'll be running a new pipeline down Patterson to connect into the two tanks. And then we'll be making the final decision before and present it to the board at the April board meeting, whether or not we're going to build one tank now or two tanks.
And thank you. And someone is asking, how wide did you say the tanks are again?
They're 212 feet in diameter, each one of them.
Can you show us an elevation of the basalt throughout the site? Dennis, our board chair, and David Monk attended the neighbors meeting and asked for them to come to provide this tonight. So this issue is critical to their decision on where to locate the tanks. So, and David, you can unmute if you want to ask. I'm not phrasing that.
Sure. No, I think you've got it. I just asked at the meeting that staff come prepared to show us this, because that was really a critical part of the decision of where to site the tanks, in addition to the oak habitat. So is that something you can present tonight?
It's not anything that we have that we can present tonight. However, we're happy to share it with anyone who is interested in seeing it. But basically the rock varies between about a foot under the dirt to 35 feet, depending on where you are on the site. So it was a critical piece. The rock is very hard, and it, the least amount that we can have to excavate, the better off everybody is, to put it not super eloquently. But we do have that information. It's still in draft form, but the final report should be finished in a couple of weeks. And that's something we'll post on our website.
Okay, thank you. Sooner the better.
And will there be any mitigation for neighbors who are living adjacent for noise and disturbances and things like that during construction?
One of our next steps is we're going to start preparing a construction mitigation plan on how we're going to handle all of the noise and traffic and impacts to neighbors. And we'll bring that back to neighbors. I think we said, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, mid-spring? Late spring?
Yeah, I wasn't clear, Laura, if that would happen after the public bidding process. So I've been saying kind of late spring, early summer.
I have two folks. Devon, could you use your microphone and clarify your question? And then after Devon, I wanted to call on Matt Keating, who has a comment.
Yeah, I had a question for Jen about she talked about the watershed and the restoration, and it was, I'm confused about how it was going to be paid for. I had a question about that. I thought I heard that there was going to be a 5-year consumer fee, but maybe I heard that incorrectly. And I was curious if that is the case, or are the owners of the burned forest land responsible for paying for any parts of that restoration program for the watershed specifically?
You did hear correctly. The fee that the staff proposed and commissioners approved last week is a watershed recovery fee. That will be a flat fee on customer bills. As I mentioned, for the majority of residential customers, the fee will be $3 a month for 60 months, and then the program will sunset, the fee will sunset. That is just one funding mechanism for the watershed restoration work. And it's primarily going to fund projects like reforestation of the watershed. So not really focused so much on individual property rebuilding, but broader watershed restoration work. And as I mentioned, the board just approved this last week, and we're in the process of preparing our communications to let all customers know what this fee is, what it will pay for, when it will be implemented. So you're kind of getting the sneak preview, so to speak, and I would be happy to share a lot more details on that as we develop those communications.
Matt, did you want to make a comment or question to EWEB?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Jess. I toured the facility, and thank you, Laura, Jen, and John for joining us tonight and for the thorough presentation. I toured the facility several weeks ago and noticed that the northern site, there's old growth and potential disruption of natural habitat. And if it's feasible to simply start with the southern project, and then down the road consider that more northern project as the backup plan. Is that on the table for EWEB's next public public meeting?
It really depends on if we build 2 tanks at once. If we do, the question is, it's moot which one we build because they'll be built at the same time. We have been looking into the idea of sequencing the furthest tank in the fir trees first. However, there are some issues with how you do excavation and staging equipment and access for construction and excavation for pipelines, given that you already have 1 tank in service and you have to keep that in service and protect it. But we are still looking at that. And we're planning on submitting all of that information to the board, I believe at the April board meeting.
That's helpful. Thank you. Because that old growth habitat, that's a couple 100-year-old tree back there, at least. So I appreciate exploring the southernmost location first and foremost. Thank you.
And another question came up kind of related to that is there's this sense of these decisions on the number of tanks and their siting being made before the reports and studies have been or are being released. Can you comment on that?
We have been releasing the studies as they're final, and we've been giving the board regular updates with where we're at. And so we've been evaluating this in pieces. And so as we have had more information, we've been sharing it with neighbors. So, it may appear that way, but we are sharing the information as we have it.
Another,
add anything?
Go for it.
I guess I would say I understand that comment because, when we first met with neighbors back in March 2020, right before COVID, we shared a preliminary site design and, placement of the tanks. And that preliminary site design looked very much like what you're seeing now a year later. And yes, we did do additional studies and additional research after that neighbor meeting and after we shared the preliminary site design. But I'm fairly new to infrastructure projects, but it's my understanding that that's pretty much how a design project works. There is kind of some initial research and a preliminary site design is developed, and then there's additional research done to confirm or alter that preliminary site design. And I guess I would add that EWEB has spent about a year doing some detailed research and public engagement, including as Laura said, presenting all the information to the board in public meetings as it becomes available, and communicating frequently with neighbors. Unfortunately, COVID not only delayed the project, but made it harder for us to communicate with neighbors. And so we've had to rely on electronic communications for almost a year now. So most of the information that we've been sharing with neighbors, well, not most of it, all of it, has been via email newsletter updates. We've been sending about one a month. And I definitely understand that it's complex and it's hard to digest information in newsletter format. I wish we could have gotten together more frequently with neighbors in person and gathered out on the site, because I think it's easier to understand the site layout, to grasp the scope and scale of the tanks when you're able to be together in person out on the site. Unfortunately, that just wasn't an option, but we have been really doing our best to share all the information as it becomes available and be very transparent with neighbors throughout the process.
And if I could just share a little bit of what I've learned as far as being a commissioner, is an infrastructure of this size is going to have impacts no matter what. You know, that's just the bottom line of it. We can't build 212 foot by 30 foot deep tanks without having some impacts, either to neighbors, to the environment, to the system as a whole. And we have done quite a bit of extensive research and studies to do the triple bottom line. What's the best for the social, what's the best for the economics, and what's the, you know, and we are going to lose some trees. That's unfortunate. If we could save every tree, we would, but that's not going to happen, I hate to say. So we have to look at all aspects of this and know that there are going to be impacts and try and minimize those to the best extent that we can.
We have a question from John Q, a member of our disaster preparedness team in Southeast, about any dangers coming from the blasting at the site for potential fire sparking wildfires.
The blasting is not like it is in the movies. It's a controlled blast. So they drill holes down about 20 feet, 30 feet down into the rock. They leave the soil on top. The charges are put into the hole. And then there is it just blows apart the rock, but there's not like the big fiery ball of explosion. So there's no fire danger associated with this type of excavation.
And be sure and get your questions into the chat if you have last ones, or alternatively, you could raise your hand, and if you have a quick 10-15 second question, we can take a couple more. Brian says lower cost and less overall site impact if both are billed at the same time. I don't see any more questions.
Yes, I'm getting a question. This is Sue. I'm getting a question that's being relayed to me, but I'm not sure I'm going to do it justice here. I might have Sandra see if she can just unmute herself and speak. Sandra, can you do that?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
I think the question was the idea of 2 tanks being built on the 40th site is very new. Neighbors were told all along it was 1 tank down, then 10 years down the road, the other one. And I heard Laura say that that decision hasn't absolutely been made, so that's something. But I've also wondered, and I've gotten different information about, if you build 1 tank, there's a certain estimate of construction time and the number of loads that have to go off the site and all that. And so the bottom line question people are talking about, well, does building 2 tanks at the same time, how does that extend the time of construction? And are we talking about 2,000 trucks? And then if you have both, you're talking about 4,000 trucks. What does it do to the truck traffic and the extension of the building construction time? Does that make sense?
That does make sense. We are in the middle of that evaluation right now. You are correct. It was a new request that came through. So we're looking at all aspects of how it affects truck trips, the number of truck trips. There is a reduced amount of earthwork. The overall projects, if you look at the time it takes to build one tank now, plus the time it takes to build one, say 10 years in the future versus 2 now, it's actually faster to do them at the same time. So there are advantages and disadvantages, and that's what we're looking at now and are preparing to send to the board in April. Did that answer your question, Sandra?
No, it didn't present the answer to the question, but that you don't have the answer yet. So I appreciate that. And then is the board will make the decision on whether it's 1 tank or 2 tanks?
It is going to the board as a record of decision. Jen, can you speak more to how that process works? Oh, you're muted.
Clicked my camera instead of my microphone. Record of decision, even though I've been with EWEB for so long, I haven't seen that many myself, so I'm not super familiar with what the terminology is, like what the board is asked to do, like acknowledge it. Maybe Commissioner Barofsky can weigh in. I don't want to put you on the spot because you're so new to the board, but in general, what I understand it to be is it's the staff will present. This is based on our analysis, what has been determined will occur at the site, and the commissioners are asked to, I want to say acknowledge it, but I'm not sure that is exactly the right word, but I don't believe it's an actual like voting and approval type process. I'm sorry that I can't be more specific.
It's new to both of us.
And it's new to me as well. My understanding is on capital projects like this, it's kind of like Jen said, they'll present us with what they're planning on doing. We will review and advise on it, and then acknowledge the record. And that gives the staff the ability to move forward with the project, bidding it, doing all the things that they need to do. It's not an actual yay or nay vote. We will weigh in on it and give our opinions on it as I understand it. But then it's kind of moving forward, and it's a construction project after that.
Jen, can we see the map one more time? Can you flip? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not seeing any more comments or questions. Did I miss any?
I don't think so. I think all the questions have been asked. So we really appreciate you, John, Jen, and Laura, for coming in and making this presentation to the Southeast Neighbors. Like you say, we had one scheduled for last March, but the COVID hit and that kind of kiboshed that thing. So we appreciate y'all coming out now, and maybe when things start rolling around this summer, as soon as maybe there is an opportunity, even though it's not at one of our regularly scheduled meeting, we would be more than welcome to host a neighborhood meeting for y'all to come at that point in time and tell us where we're at in the project and how the project might be moving along, because we can either get probably Amazon Community Center would be the best place to have that at, I'd imagine. That way we could hold perhaps a larger audience. So I'm extending that invitation to you to take me up on that if the chance occurs.
Thanks,
Do y'all
Dennis.
have anything else to say in final words here at all?
Thank you for the opportunity to present to you folks tonight.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm just gonna open up the floor, and is there anyone else that has anything they want to share with Southeast Neighbors? Yeah, see anything, Jen? Jess?
I don't see anything. Everybody's quiet. We've either put them to sleep or.
I have a question. This is Virginia. Sorry, I'm just butting in because I can't figure out how to raise my hand.
Okay, Virginia, go ahead.
Yeah, I've thought of this before, and looking at the map, it becomes even more clear. But that ugly parking lot at Safeway, is there any way to make them put some trees in?
I don't know, talk to Matt Keating about that.
So our tree canopy is around 23%. And I want to say Portland is up around 29% or so. We should be closer to 30%. And so yeah, I'm all about planting trees. So great suggestion. I would love to see a dashboard in which neighbors could weigh in and say where there need to be more trees. But yes, we've recently had a work session about the tree canopy, and I'm happy to talk more offline about the details and how we could work together to better improve our urban forestry.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I'll just reiterate one more time is that hopefully y'all got the newsletter or y'all went to the website or the Facebook page. You see the committees that we have working for our Southeast Neighbors. Everybody is very enthusiastic in the committees. We all have a lot that we're working on. Tomorrow, I'm out at Tugman Volunteers. We're doing some more cleanup. We planted a bunch of plants. Transportation committee's working on several issues. The environmental stewardship is really going to town, and we're trying to get our human rights committee really active and getting cranked on here, coming up with some issues and some actual projects that we can promote here in South Eugene. And also the communications committee, they're working very, very hard on the website and other type of communications that we have to deal with on a daily basis. So, and disaster preparedness, well, they're like the prima donna of our neighborhood because they're like the prima donna of the whole city. I think the rest of the city's disaster preparedness programs are being modeled after one that John Q and David Monk and some of the other really good activists in our neighborhood have put their full heart and full soul into it and thrown their bodies into it at the same time. So that's all I have to say, but thanks everybody so much. If you're not on our email list, be sure to go to the Southeast Neighbors website, sign up for it, and I'll get you on the list, and you get updates every month on what's going on in the neighborhood and when our general meetings are. And be sure, if you know someone that would like to be active in the community as far as being on the Southeast Neighbors Board or part of the nominating committee, send them our way and we'd be glad to talk to them, and maybe they can be on a Zoom meeting with us. How about that, huh? Anyway, thanks to Jess for being my co-host here tonight. Really appreciate that, and all the rest of the board. And from that, I don't have anything further to say except bye-bye.